Peace, everyone. How you doing? Welcome to Israel Doctrine's Google Hangout. This is our Israel Doctrine Reloaded channel, and we back once again dealing with this sovereignty issue, right? And so I put a little small title up here, and I got a couple brothers with me, Dolla Skillz, Rawyal, and this Israel Doctrine. I am Brother Polite. Contractual sovereignty, right? We're gonna be dealing with contract a little bit more here, and all of the man to talk more about that. We also gonna go into child support a little bit, some of the things that Polite man trying to deal with over there, and give you another perspective on the things he's been talking about. So I've been talking, y'all done heard me 2 videos already talking about sovereignty and things of that nature. So I'm gonna throw it over to Dolla Skillz and let him start it off, and we just gonna bounce off each other. Even when Rawyal make it, we gonna bounce off each other and just talk about some of these things and give y'all some more perspective or another perspective on it. So without further ado, Dolla, you the man.
Yes, my brother. Peace to you, peace to the chat, to all the listeners. Yeah, man, I saw the show you did last night. You touched a little bit on some things that was said, and we've touched on it before. I like to always do the way you do it, and let's make it for the people. Now, a lot of people heard this term for art reflects life. So let's look at how Hollywood producers have pushed this narrative codified in specific movies that deal with issues of slavery. And I'll name like 3 of them. You got movies like Roots, you got movies like The Django, and you got movies like the later one, 12 Years of a Slave. If you notice in every one of the narratives in those films that deal with slavery, in the sense of blacks being placed in a form of slavery, they deal with an alternative to that, which is known as the Freeman Papers. If you looked at it from the Roots perspective, you've seen aspects of certain men that were free during the time of enslavement in the southern region. When you see it in the Django, you see that Jamie's character, the Django, was trying to free his wife from slavery, and they had the Freeman Papers towards the end with Leonardo DiCaprio, where he signed off, as well as 12 Years of a Slave. So this is about whether or not there is a way to claim what is known as sovereignty in the form of contractual agreements, i.e. the state and the church, and dealing with specific ecclesiastical principalities, laws that govern the courtrooms, the states, and commercial interests. So, just to start the platform, I want to correlate it to something that people can look at and relate to their lives through art, which is every one of those films in some way, shape, or form showed you a legal process to free a man's physical body from captivity.
Yeah, for sure. And just contract itself is how we end up in some of this situation that we end up in today, because back in the days there wasn't no contract. You know what I'm saying? No contract, no paper even created yet to write a contract on. So it was verbalized and things of that nature, how people gonna govern and how they gonna do things of that nature, which took us in my conversation earlier this morning, still dealing with it. Are you going to take it by force, or are you going to take it by agreement? Because either way it go, fear is the #1 thing. Fear of eventually coming in conflict with another party about a matter, and the other party being stronger, and able to do what they want to do anyway. It's going to take us into a lot of places. So one of the contracts that we find ourselves dealing with today is birth certificates. Every time a child is born, a contract is drawn up. We done talked about this before. When you get on the highways and stuff, you contract with them, buy a license, purchase a license and stuff to move around in a city, state, or whatever. You know, you got a contract, you got a state ID. These things are what's going on. So unbeknown to a lot of people, as the Moors, and you know, we'll just be even more Pacific. As the Moor Science Temple of America say, you got a contract with them to be in your sovereignty rights. You know what I'm saying? Now their stuff is done through more of a religious institute, i.e., what Dolla was saying earlier, ecclesiastical principalities through a religious system and stuff. Them and their contract with the United States government, you know, the US of A. You see this in their paperwork and their stuff, right? Then you got people like Ali Muhammad that speaks about this. Quiet as kept, he's been in the dark with it a little bit lately and stuff. You have to go to his physical, you know, what's the spot, National Black Theater thing, and sit down and become a part of his class and take his courses and stuff. Polite selling it online. It's you know, his IamBrotherPolight channel and website now denotes he's selling still booklets and audio videos and stuff on the matter. So I played some audio showing that he's doing this up on the Most High, a spiritual being, a king, a spiritual king, and things of that nature through birthright, so on and so forth. So we gonna go into it some more. We're gonna eventually play that audio for anybody that ain't heard it and talk about it. But I'm gonna get the mic back over.
Yeah, let me say this too, because again, I'm gonna bring it right back to simplicity. The general public is informed that the state as a governing body of politics has been separated. We can go into the history on that, but I'm saying that to say this. When you look at the rule of law in the courtrooms, specifically here in the United States or the United States of America, you can't tell me that the judges that rule and sit on the bench may or may not have certain religious practices that will then influence the ways at which they rule in the court based on the laws that govern society. So for somebody that might not understand how we can come to these conclusions, as they say, of how the ecclesiastical principalities manipulate the courtroom and the system of government, you have individuals who are politicians who ascribe to different faiths, and then those faiths transcend into the ways at which they rule in law in the courtroom. So it has an adverse effect to the general public, whether you like it or not, whether you like the Bible or not. It has a place in the courtroom. Whether you like even the Quran or not, Sharia law and things of that nature, it all manifests itself in the courtroom, because you have different individuals in politics who have private religious faiths that they follow, and it then influences the ways at which they govern themselves in the political positions they've been either elected in or placed in through colleges of electorate and things of that nature. So that's just to give the people a way to see where we're transcending our thought process, because like Israel said, this is not general knowledge. If you notice, anytime a lot of different people on like YouTube give different videos on this stuff, be it UCC, birth certificates, they always give a disclaimer that they're not giving the people any legal advice. My advice is to do your research, and it takes a knowledge in a lot of different things, not just law. It involves history, it involves religion to a high degree. And before you start applying anything you hear from these people, including myself, make sure you study first to show yourself approved, and be careful, because there are principalities in play that don't want to see people come out of the political status they're in, i.e., if you want to call it black people, based on labor. Because at the end of the day, somebody has to build it. And they want the general community of black people, as we see in our society, to be the day laborers. You see that kind of shifting with some of the Mexican groups that are coming across the border, and they're becoming more of the day laborers. But when it comes to service, whether it be in the food industry, in the land care industry, i.e., anything you see that involves day laborers, somebody's got to do the labor. So there is a system in play to keep this knowledge a secret. and you have to be very careful when using it. But it can be beneficial if you do the study and you do the application with the right frame of mind and the right intent, and that's how I see it.
Right. So this brings us into the fact that we know that, quote unquote, the European, the Caucasian, the white man came and put a flag down, and this is how he states, "This is my land. I found it. You know, I established it." We know that that's how he worked, right? And outside of that, he brought paper to the table, and he had things written up, and he had people sign it. Well, when people was unable to read and understand what they were signing, no matter what the negotiation process was and what was traded up on, right, or agreed upon, if you can't read the handwriting, you can't read the handwriting. You don't know what it is you agreed upon on paper, on contract. And this is how they took a lot of things. They took a
Let
lot
me
of,
say this, Israel, to kind of complement what you said. The term in law is called escheatment. They escheated the land in the form of contractual agreements, like he said, that didn't necessarily reflect an agreement from the people as a whole, because some people couldn't even read what the contract said. So that's a
right.
form of escheatment of property.
Okay, that's the legal terminology. That's why he's here, right? So this is how they done it, right? This is how they brought people into agreement. So when you have a contract, when you have this piece of paper, the sovereignty that you are granted within that, and in the bigger scale of things, whoever the sovereign government is, whoever runs the commonwealth, you know, is the ones that's gonna dictate reward and punishment for those who act within the contract, or those that act outside of the contract, break the contract, right? So it's agreed upon, and whoever break it is the one that's gonna get punished, and the other's gonna get rewarded for staying within the bound areas of the contract. So this is what we got to deal with. They enforce that on society, and that's what we dealing with and living by now. This is the era and the world that we live in today. Contract, everything you do when you sign up to Facebook, everything else, it's a contract. You know, whether you read the small print or not, whether if you understand everything in the contract or not, you contract. You say, I agree. And when you agree, you just entered into a contract, right? Polite understands this. So why is he not really breaking it down? I don't know, but we're going to talk more about it and go into it. I'm going to pass it over to Dolla, because it seemed like he got some insight that he want to bring out on it. So go ahead, bro.
Yeah, see, the problem is interpretation of word. And of course, Israel doctrine deals a lot about it when he talks about the Bible. You have certain figurative speech, and then you have literal meanings. What happens with the confusion of the situation is that most people are not informed of the different meanings of words in the English language. Now, I'm going to simplify it. You have THERE, THEIR, THEY apostrophe RE. Now, in simplicity, every single one of those words are pronounced the same way there, but they have different meaning when you place them into a specific context of a sentence. For instance, if you said THERE, you would be pointing to a place. If you said THEIR, you would be referring to a group of people. But the English language is codified to where each one is pronounced the same. That's why most people who try to learn the English language that speak other languages will tell you English is one of the hardest languages to learn, because other languages deal with things more literally, whereas the English language is more figurative when dealing in context of speech. So now when we're talking about the term contract, we have to look at the cons and the pros of the situation and understand the difference between contracting and protraction. This goes a little bit back into the law of water up against the law of land. Whereas anciently, They didn't write anything on paper like Israel Doctrine said. They did it in word formation, and all of the bartering systems were based off natural commodities, i.e. gold, silver, copper, zinc, crops, and not this paper money that we are currently using as our current form of exchange in the US and pretty much globally, with the exception of a few nations. So you got to first look into the differences between the meanings of words. You have a Webster's dictionary, you have a Merriam's dictionary, you have a Black's Law dictionary. And I'm saying that to say this. If you look at Black's Law Dictionary and Digital Pit Boss, I like that he says this. He always shows his viewers, shout out to Pit Boss, his Black's Law Dictionary. I think they're up to the 10th edition. I implore the listeners to either download the PDFs of Black's Law, which they have online, or to go purchase one, because what Black's Law Dictionary affords you is the ability to take specific English terms and put them into the context of what the meaning of the word is in the rule of law, meaning, i.e., what those words were termed to mean in a court system. Kind of like the Ebonics system. Me and Israel Doctrine can sit here and have a whole Ebonics conversation, but what do these words really mean, and what is the enforcement on these words? Black's Law Dictionary is a great way for people to hold up and contrast English words and learn the the case law associated with the history of the courtroom in the United States and even prior, and what words mean and how the application of them can apply when we're having these discussions about contracts, birth certificates, UCC, or any of that. You got to first understand what contracts are, the law that governs them, and then look at it in protraction, which is gold. So when you talk contract, you're talking paper. When you're talking protraction, you're talking gold, and you're talking word. And that's when we start to get into the common law system, Roman civility law, or the law of water up against the law of land. And we spoke about this before. When you would leave,
law.
and natural law. When you leave anciently, when you left and you came from one country to the next across water, what they would do is they would draw shippers manifest so that you would not have to travel with all of your gold, your animals, i.e., you would get on a boat and you would do a foreign exchange. You see that in colleges now. They have the foreign exchange student. What they would do is they would write all of your wealth out on a piece of paper, and that shipper's manifest would travel with you to the other land that you were going to, and they would do a transfer of your property rights so that whatever you owned in one landmass, you can get the equivalent of that in that new landmass that you were coming into, and hold that equivalent to what you had on the other side. And then they would send people from that side to the other side, and that's the difference between contracts and the law of the land, i.e., contracts were only supposed to be ran on water, not on land. But we live in a system now where contracts govern everything, and that's the problem. So that opens up a lot of different topics and discussions we can have. But at the end of the day, my point is you have to understand what these words mean in contrast to what you think they mean, because they have various different meanings. And I just threw 3 different dictionary authors to show you that if you go look in the Merriam's dictionary and read a term, it might be similar, but it has a slight difference. And a Black's Law dictionary shows you what the courtrooms have ruled English words mean. And that's pivotal to understand how to put this in application here.
Yeah, a lot of people probably know about that because it's been talked about for a handful of years now, and the Moors most definitely Taj Tariq Bey, he lives and died with that book. He probably slobbing on it at night as he getting some sleep, most definitely. But natural law, that's a big part of this, people, which will tell you how things occur naturally and how things are governed naturally, which, man has been looking at nature for a mighty long time and studying nature to understand how to govern things. A lot of these things, as we say, ecclesiastical principalities, they're ran off of the law, statutes, and commandments of the Bible, whether if you know it or not. Because during the feast days, if you couldn't make it up to the feast because you had all this cattle and stuff in the field, then you took it somewhere, sold it, got the value for it, and exchanged that for the gold or silver, whatever it was, i.e. in these days, paperwork to say you got that money, or fiat currency, you take it up to Jerusalem, and the people there agree, once again, up on agreement, that these nuggets or paperwork you have allow you to deal with exchange now. You can exchange that paper, that gold, for drink or whatever your soul lusted after, right? You know, you're Israelites, you're still supposed to keep lusting after the right things. Lust is not wrong. If I lust for a wife, that's not wrong. If I lust for another man's wife, then I'm coveting, and that'll be adultery if I, you know, live out that lust. So once again, the Bible dictates a lot. We're gonna get into it. We're gonna get into it, people. I'm gonna start opening up. I might just open up a whole nother channel and start dealing with biblical teachings for y'all that, you know, really want to jump into that more. But I'm gonna throw it back, because later on, if Rawyal make it, we're gonna talk about you know, child support and things of that nature. And we really gonna get into why people have to, you know, deal with child support. And it's based off of natural law, because and he just popped in, it's based off of what people used to say all the time: mama's baby, daddy's maybe. So that birth certificate and your name being on it and stuff. We'll get into that Rawyal here, but I'm gonna throw it back to Dolla so we can start bouncing off each other. You know, Rawyal pretty smart. He'll catch up with what we're talking about.
No doubt.
Peace.
Yeah, that's peace. What up, Rawyal? That's why I said earlier.
Chilling, peace. What's good?
It's all love, baby. You already know, man. Good to hear from you too. We ain't had a chat in a minute. Yeah, but what Israel was saying, I had touched on that so people could understand, like, whether you subscribe to whatever religious practice you subscribe to, you have to understand that those religions influence and dictates how certain judges rule in the courtroom. So there's a certain aspect of how a certain religious, a person's or individual's religious practice will transcend into the courtroom. And he mentioned, I'll give you just a breadcrumb. If you go look up certain words like trust or will, go pull up all of the biblical statutes, or even the ones in the Quran, in the Sharia law, you will find certain remedies for the courtroom based on the natural fact that throughout history, different judges rule based on their religious beliefs when they were dealing with certain weights and measures in the court system. And that case law can be administered now to have a application in what you're trying to get done, be it child support, be it, you know, credit card, be it mortgage, modifications and things of that nature, real estate. It has an application to be knowledgeable of the rule book that governs the ways at which these things are ruled upon in the courtroom. And religion does play a major part of that. You can't separate the two really, because of the fact that, for instance, like I said, if you get a Black's Law Dictionary, the very beginning of any edition is going to take you through what is known as the judicial canons of ethics. Now, when you start unraveling terms like canons, then that's going to bring you under Roman civility law. So whether a person who's a judge agrees to be Catholic or not, he is, by his oath, being an administrator for a specific principality that is already set in stone, i.e. the judicial ethics, which is codified in canon law. And you can get the Black's Law Dictionary and look in the beginning. It gives you the lawyer's ethics, and it's called the lawyer's canons and ethics and the judicial canons and ethics. And these are the rules that govern the administration of judges. Let me say this too. It's imperative for people to study the different branches of government, judicial, legislative, and executive, and understand how they work together to move things in our society commercially. And it'll help you a lot when you're trying to do things in the court system, to understand who does what. I always say know the rules before you play the game. So you got to study the rule book before you can put anything in the application with this stuff.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Number one, don't play with this. It's not for children. It's for grown folks, and it's for people that's ready to take their life in their own hand. You know what I'm saying? And be able to, you know, dictate and govern your own life. If you ain't got no skill or no trade or nothing where you can make money for yourself or do stuff for yourself to exist in this world, then it's best you keep, you know, dealing with the beast and taking off his, you know, nipple, you know, on the breast of the beast. Is only it's imperative that you do it, because you're not gonna survive no other way. And the beast, like I said, for you to be in the belly of the beast, that means the beast had to eat you. You know what I'm saying? Unless you went through the anus, you either going through the mouth or going through the anus. And I don't think you're gonna make a trip up the anus. So simple as that. But Royal, you got that mic fixed because it's.
You hear me or no?
Yeah, I hear you. You're pretty loud too. That's what.
Okay.
You got.
Yeah, nah, shit. I think I can't hear you now.
Oh well, let's work on it a little bit. You can hear me. Your mic fixed. Everything's straight.
Yeah, my mic is good then. I hear you now.
Okay.
Yeah, the last thing I heard you was saying, you know, shit, how we born in the belly of, I mean, well, I say we born in the belly of the beast at this point, you know, because they done ate so much of our ancestors and bodies on bodies, and you know, we born in it, you know.
Right.
So it's how you escape. That's where you get Dr. Amos saying, cut the underbelly out. You know, that's, you got to find a way to escape out of this thing. And so in turn, you know, some people find, you know, religious ways, and some people find other tactics, you know, to escape. And when it comes to, you know, being sovereign, you know, it's 2017, man. I look at it like this, you know, you got to show it's you look at how President Trump now and his inauguration was saying it's a year show and prove. You can't just go for nobody's random word like that. You know, Dollar made it pretty clear. Know the rules. You know, you're making it clear that you better know that, you know that book that you're standing on if you're going to go in under a religious umbrella. You know, like some of the Moors, they go in, and on some people try to join these different factions to try to seek some type of relief, you know, and apparently none of it's working. You understand? Because some people even think, well, all I got to do is be rich. That don't work either. You know, if you know the rules, like I'm not rich or religious, and all I did was learn the rules. And by learning the rules, I knew what was going to work and what wasn't going to work. And then I also found out something, whereas like the rules actually get thrown out after you learn the rules. You understand? So that's really key. Like, don't think joining anybody's group is just randomly going to bring you, you know, it's going to be a magic wand. There's no magic wand for one, you know, say it's if I say all you got to do is go in there and say, you know, 3 words will get you out of there. It might work for 2 people out of 20. You know, so that's really what it is. Learning the rules are key, at least so you can say you have something to you know, you can be backed by law. All right, so once you learn the rules and you get to a point where you know your paperwork is in front of the judge, and the judge can determine, well, okay, your paperwork is right, then you're going to start getting into the street part of it. There's a street element that I had to learn the hard way. And you know, I think I explained this anytime I'm, you know, I'm speaking on child support. And some people that I met over the weekend, you know, that was saying like, hey, I watched your video, you know, a bunch of times, and there's a mental thing that comes into play. Now, psychologically, a lot of people have all of the rules down packed. There's a lot of people that know, you know, that know pretty much every law, so forth and so on. But when they get into court, it get thrown out because they get intimidated by these magistrates. And you're not even getting to the judge. I'm just talking about the magistrate, which is a version of a secretary to the judge. So once you sitting in front of that magistrate, if you don't apply the rules and you don't use that language in front of the magistrate, because they're going to just bully you with, you know, with a little bit of wording.
Well, let's take a sec, because we was talking about this earlier, and I was just simply stating that at the end of the day, it's contract, and based up on the contract, it gives you certain power to be able to work within the guidelines of what's being stated in the contract. It give you power and they give the other party power. And anyone that's working within the rules and regulations of what's in the contract get rewarded for doing
you're
so.
talking about the contract of the what you're talking about with the court or anything?
We're talking in general now. Now, when you court also, because those contracts eventually can be taken to a higher, as you say, magistrate, someone further up the Commonwealth ladder. You know what I'm saying? Someone that truly has sovereignty over it. So let's do this before we go any further. Whichever one y'all really want to do it, because y'all a little better with the lingo and stuff than me. Let's look up sovereignty in 2 or 3 different, or whichever one y'all would think will be more prominent, right? Or paramount in this situation. Let's look up sovereignty and see what it say, because sovereignty in itself, you have it and you don't have it because of the dictionary term. If we could do that, we'll just deal with the term. Yeah,
sovereignty is a political concept that refers to dominant power. This is I got like a legal dictionary. I mean, legal term for it. Sovereignty is sovereignty is a political concept that refers to dominant power or supreme authority. In a monarchy, supreme power resides in a sovereign or king. In modern democracies, sovereign power rests with the people and is exercised through representative bodies such as Congress or Parliament.
Now, now let me show y'all something, because I said this earlier. See how he gave a very in-depth definition? Now, here's my definition, and this is just general Google search. Sovereign is a supreme ruler, especially a monarch. Sovereign is one possessing supreme or ultimate power. And then they give an example, a former British gold coin worth £1 sterling. Now, one minted for commemorative purposes. So, see how the sovereign right goes right into the gold coin, right, in the pound sterling? But yet it gave you literally all of these different terms and definitions. That's why I was saying earlier, the absolute term when dealing with it in law is going to be why people have to study what's known as case law. And you got to go find the actual ways at which the court ruled that certain terms are to be administered in law, because when you're thinking it from your own understanding, it may not apply or be applicable in any court case that you're in.
So now, before we go a little bit further, and what Dolla said earlier, right before Rawyal chimed in, the Supreme Court justices are pretty much dominated by Catholics. So just keep that in mind as we speak and further go on with this conversation, because as we just said, as it go from one court to the next court and go to the highest court or jurisdiction or whatever, then there you have it. You're going to end up dealing with those that deal with Catholicism. And
I got you.
But go ahead now, Rawyal. You can go back into.
All right. So now I got you. Okay. So now, because all right. So when it comes to it's it's more psychological than anything. If you believe you free, then you free, right? But then you got to defend your freedom, period. All right, because there's going to be people that impede on your freedom. You got the feds, you got the police, you got the banks, you got the state, you have other individuals. So the thing is, yes, you can be free with whether it's the book, the contracts, and so forth and so on. But you got to realize, like, when somebody else colonize your freedom, what are you going to do? That's the only thing that's going to separate your sovereignty from somebody else's sovereignty. The courts saying, okay, well, the Catholics, the Christians, the Muslims, that's the whole issue that's going on right now. Everybody, you understand? Most people that feel, that within their natural law, they know they're free. But the thing is, against the French armies, against the U.S. Against the U.S. armies, so forth and so on. So really, that's really it a little tricky, because Once you understand that these men and women, they don't worship like you, they're not your kings, they're not your gods, then once you start embracing the fact that you're your own king, you're your own god, and you rule over your own family and things like that, then you start realizing like, okay, you know, we can function this way. But then sometimes the police don't know that. Feds don't know that. So
Yeah.
they'll try to test you. In turn, that's how you get the whole issue with that's the same way you got the same issue with the Black Panthers. You got what I'm saying? They
Well,
was functioning all using the law, and then they were, you know, and then they were challenged. Although they were right in using the law, you had the feds attacking them, the local police attacking them, and the president attacking them, and then the news media not helping the issue just by the perception. So uh, you know, no matter how you lay it out, that's one of the things you have to deal with. You got to deal with perception, especially when you're in a social media age. Social media is something where people can attack your word, and here you are, you're minding your own business, you're sovereign, right? But all of a sudden, people can, you know, they can pull you out of your sovereign state by calling you or summoning you. You understand? So that's really what it's about. But once they summon you, if you agree that
summoning people, that's a good,
summoning, right?
yeah, that we need to deal with. But I would say also, let's put the term fear within sovereignty, because as you say, you have to fight for your sovereign right. That's where you have dominion and I have dominion, but who has ultimate dominion over a situation or concept or whatever? Who truly rules it, and who's going to attain that rule, as I said earlier, by agreement or by force? Well, either you're going to do it and you're going to sign this contract, or you're going to live it out, unless we're going to bring the sword. You know what I'm saying? Or do I got to talk to you and get you just to sign it and agree to it, and then we go to another party that dictates, you know, because they have more power over the issue
Well,
than
that's where I say exchange comes in, because I have my own theory when it comes to the figurative and literal understanding in the courtrooms, meaning that we're having a sovereignty discussion, but then to me, in my understanding of law, sovereignty and indigenous or indigenous rights are like oil and water. They don't go together. So it's like sovereignty deals with water, i.e., a monarch controlling another body of land across an entire ocean, i.e., the Atlantic Ocean. You have the Crown of Britain, and if you look at it codified through the commercial law, which is contracts, paperwork, the British corporation owns the U.S. corporation. But now, then you have another aspect of law which deals with indigenous rights to land, and that don't mix, because that deals more with actual soil content based on the blood rights and the mineral contents in your blood. So now you're bound to the land. Even in the biblical sense, you were made from the dust of the earth. So now that's more dealing with the indigenous right. And then now you got to understand how the sovereign principalities have usurped that right when it comes to tribal affairs. And then it goes deeper into Indian contract rights and different colonial systems, which I say was more conquest.
right. But this goes more back into, as you know, I was saying when we was talking earlier, right before we did this, and we was coming up with exactly what we're gonna deal with. It boils down to the simplicity of it. Fear, like I said, with fear come into play, is always a bigger person out there whose sword is bigger, who can break the contract and say we're gonna drop a new contract. You know, this is where you get new covenants coming in at. You know what I'm saying? A new form of contract, a new covenant, a new agreement laid on the table, and that's did through fear. So now all of us have given our sovereign right to the government, right? And so the only way we can really deal with all these things is to get, and that's why the Moors do their thing, and which is true though. That's why you got to get into government, because if you're not the one that's sitting over the governing bodies of this power, or this situation, how are you going to dictate it to others? So whether if it's the white man sitting over America or the black man, we just had the situation with Obama sitting over the corporation. Now we got Trump about to sit over the corporation. Now, how many more blacks have sit in seats in city, states, and towns and stuff, which we know is all corporations, to be able to enforce certain things that, you know, is conducive to what we want, to what we trying to bring about, right? Because when we go to these people, they either gonna look at the contract one way and decide on it one way, or they in our favor or against our favor, right? So you have to become a governing body, and you have to become a part of government and politics. So you,
well, hold on. Let's go back to the beginning now, so that we don't lose the narrative, because this is important. What's the first contract? And this is where the discussion of the birth certificate comes in. What is the first time at which a contractual agreement, i.e., paper signature, form of exchange commercially was entered into? And this is where you could see, based on your life, the first contractual agreement would be that which was drawn up on what's known as your live birth record, and it involves your mother and father, if they're available, informing the actual government, the governing body of politic, that you were born into the world on paper with certain rights, obligations, liabilities, benefits, gifts, grants, and all of the different legal jargon terms wrapped into one, based on this original or first contractual agreement that we enter into, as Rawyal said, when we are born into the belly of the beast.
so when we born, the first people with sovereignty over us is our parents, because they're the higher authority and power in the house and in the territory in which we break that birth canal.
Correct.
Right. So looking at it in the same manner, the state and dealing with nature itself, you know, a child is owned by their parents. And so when they sign over the birth certificate, they given now, i.e. the corporation, authority over the child. And then you wonder why the government want to raise your children and tell you how you can dictate or do certain things to your children, right? So them are our masters. This is based up even on the Bible. Under thy mother and father is that commandment right before you go into love thy neighbor, because that's a part of the set government or the protocol of God, right? For a child, it's, you know, just to deal with the biblical protocol. The father give it to the son give it to the angel give it to man over the woman, and man and woman over the child. You can't separate the fact that the man and woman is one, and that one authority is over the child. That's the first part of the 10 commandments. Love God, right? So when you go into that, then they having dominion over the child and giving that dominion over to the state through the birth certificate.
Now let me say something real quick, Israel, because this is the perpetual motion within the system. When they sign their parents sign the birth certificate. So it's also it's in a form perpetual bondage, because even when your mother or father is signing off on the information, i.e. the live birth record, they too were already signed off to the corporate governing body, state politic, and it's been perpetual going back in history to about the year 1666, and we could talk about that a little later, but that deals with the Sesta Trust Act, and it involved a new form of institution of governing body of politics, where, i.e., we're talking trust here. The birth certificate was a form of a trust based on contractual agreements and how we were born into that perpetually.
Right. Where it goes back into slavery, and the children that's born of the slaves is a perpetual thing. This is my slave, I own it, and anything that comes out of this womb is mine.
Right. Well, at this point, I think a lot of people should know what a straw man or straw woman is, when the paperwork is what they have jurisdiction over. They don't have jurisdiction over the child per se. So what winds up happening is, because of ignorance of laws, you know, maybe some people don't study because they think, oh, that's too deep, or I don't got time to learn all of that stuff. they wind up, it becomes physical, where the child, they give up physical rights to the child, where they start getting vaccines, and they're forced under certain conditions physically, because of the paperwork, and they think that, oh, this is my child because that's his name on this document. And that's what really makes it perpetual, because they're looking at you like, well, you know um what then again, it's like being summoned. You understand? So you're summoning a spirit to take on a body, and usually that hollow body is that empty straw, which is going to be that paperwork with your name in all caps. So that's really what we're dealing with when it comes to the paperwork and the contractual sovereignty and the birth certificates and social security numbers and things like that. So it's a really tricky situation, and again, it's all on knowledge. If the parents know how to use this paperwork to their advantage, will behoove you to at least understand how to deal with both, because you consistently throughout your life, you're dealing with both, whether it's you got a cell phone, whether you got a Con Ed bill, or any of these things, you're dealing with both. Just because your name is on the paper, that's not you. So if you choose to carry on that debt, then or you can use the debt to your advantage. In all actuality, African Americans are the creditors, and we was in debt to us.
Yeah, let's not get too deep with them doing functionality.
No, I'm not getting deep. I'm just saying, because what winds up happening is, because that's not a conversation, because it seems too deep. What winds up happening is people abandon that conversation, and then you wind up becoming a debtor, and then that's in turn, and you wind up becoming a debtor, moving around with the birth certificate.
Anytime you come into contract, you are in debt to do what you said you're going to do in the obligations that you agreed to in the contract. So like you say, I know that who was that I signed a contract with, Mobilely, in the 90s? I forget whoever the company was back then. Anyway, they still looking at me today and trying to hunt me down because I signed the contract with them, and quote unquote, I broke the contract because it said you got to pay so much a month and you got to keep this phone and this, that, and the other. Same thing with utility companies and all of that. Like you said, ain't us. But if you're going to function in that name, under that social and so on and so forth, then that's the situation you have. So as Black people, just to break it down to simplicity, we understand that the straw man and the corporation, this and that. That's why even when you have a child, you create that child and you keep doing business in another name, that your child name and your child's social security number. Your people die and people keep that name and that social security number working in the system, and the person is dead, but that's a corporation. It's not a person. The person is dead, but the actual name and company and stuff that was created is still working in the system. The social security number still works. So
the straw, because there's no death certificate yet.
Great.
Well, this deals like a little bit with a state. Like everything that you do in our society is done via some form of and be associated with an account, meaning you can't purchase a car without having a bank account, and you can't drive it unless you have some form of identification that gives you the right to move in commerce a certain way or not to. So all of these things are hindered really by the contractual obligations, but understanding that the first contract was the birth certificate and that all other contracts are derived from that, i.e. if you go to the DMV to get a driver's license, what do you got to give them? Your birth certificate and your social security card. You have to give them the paperwork in order for them to create the account.
Right. So now let's get back to what we're talking about, contractual sovereignty, right? The thing is, when you do that in contract with the state, the government, or whoever you contract with, if it's just me and you, and the contract is in my favor, then I'm really the sovereign now, because you will be working for me based up on certain contracts. You work for me, so I can fire you or I can raise you up or take you down in status within my corporation, organization, or whatever. So with me putting you on a contract, then I'm more of the sovereign. You put me on a contract, you're more the sovereign. So when we contract with the federal government, we give them sovereignty, right? And we can only move in our sovereign capacity as it is spoken about.
Governed on paper, really, or
right.
How it's governed on paper.
Right. So whatever that paper say you have the power to do, because if we say we contract militarily with them, right? Let's go into military, because if we contract military, we can have license to kill. Same way in sports, if you go into boxing or whatever, if you get killed in the ring, it's not really murder because you signing a contract.
Well, simplify it. The police have a certain limited liability in their contract that if they shoot someone while they're in active duty, they are exempt from being leaned upon for the physical injury. You see it in politics, all in the news. When's the last time you seen a cop really get prosecuted because he has a license? He's licensed by his the Enforcement Bureau and the Academy to represent a certain governing body of politics for enforcement of the penal laws, code, statutes, ordinance, regulations, and customs of the specific state of the union that you're operating in commercially. So that's pretty much his license to kill.
Right. So this is what I'm really trying to like wake the masses up to now, because that's what we actually dealing with right now. This is what, at the end of the day, Polite call itself bringing to you Ali Muhammad and certain Moors from the Moor Science Temple. Even Hebrew Israelites now, they trying to talk sovereignty, but unless you start really looking into it and what you're getting yourself into and even contracting with them, as I say, the one that you contract with is the one that has the authority and the power of the contract. It's in their interest more than your interest. If they got 75% of the contract in their favor, then they running stuff, which y'all agree.
Yeah, well, that's obligation. So like you said, if you enter into an agreement, you're obligated, both parties, but then you can start putting it on the scales to see, as he said, and break it down into percentages. Contracts are dynamic, and that's the way I learned it. And let me say this too, because sometimes people got to get the history. I was involved in the music business. I own businesses. I've dealt with people internationally. So when I started to study a lot of this stuff, it leaped off the page. I worked in shipping and receiving. So when you talk about billing and manifest and moving products through different forms of commercial interest through the post office, when I started to learn about bonds and securities, it was already in me to know it because I was doing it unbeknownst to me until I looked and started to put the application to it. So understanding what's going on with the courtroom, back to the child support thing, you have to understand your obligations within the contractual agreement that was made with the state via your parents with the birth certificate, and then know the rules, right? Case law is important. You should study and dig into case law. If most people don't realize, judges have paralegals that sit and dig in case law for them all day. And when it's time for them to make a ruling, they go grab all of the information that their paralegals have put together from case law, and they hit you with 10,000 degrees. And if you don't got the case law to unravel what he's telling you and don't know the rules, there you have it.
That's a fact. That's a fact.
So now, let me just say this, and I'm going to throw it to Rawyal. That the maternal, as I said, mama's baby, daddy's maybe, right? Through the maternal, the mother has all power and right pretty much to the product she produces, a child, right? And whoever she say the daddy is, for the most part, who she been sleeping with or mating with to create with, is got to be proven nowadays through DNA and stuff. But I don't think DNA was here when they came up with the child support system. Correct me if I'm right or wrong on that, but it was always on the mother and whoever she said the daddy was, or whoever signed out on the contract for us, the birth certificate, was responsible for that which was going on contract. It states in this contract that this is your child, this is your responsibility, this is your property or whatever. So I'm gonna just say it like that. Then I'm gonna throw it to Rawyal because I know he the you know, man to deal with child support, maybe a little bit more than Dolla. I know he deal with it too. They didn't both did a show over here about it. But I'm gonna just throw it to Rawyal first. That don't mean that he the man. I'm gonna get away from that. It's going to Rawyal first.
Right. No, it's just boil down to jurisdiction on every level, whether it's the police, whether it's child support, whether it's the feds, all of that is still going to boil down to jurisdiction. And where he said, who has your God-given right, and then who is God, and who is your God, and what is your God. So I definitely, when I stepped into the court, you know, they definitely still had that Bible. And even though we didn't get into the Bible, and you know, I didn't quote anything from the Bible, I didn't bring in, you know, any with me. All I said was I just brought the information. So whereas they had case law and they would bring up case law, you know, pretty much I had to, you know, as they say, stand on my square with what I knew and in the information that I had. So at the end of the day, it wind up turning into something where they violated their own case law, and I used their own case law against them that they brought up to me when they said, okay, you are in a position where this case is just like yours. So I would study whatever they gave to me, because a lot of us, you know, you don't have access to, even if you have access, you're not searching. Sometimes we don't even know where to begin to search. So whatever they present, whatever their presentation is in any situation, you use what they present to you so you can understand the rules and what they're going by. So you say, you know, in a street situation, in a police situation, of us, you know, you can start saying, okay, well, you know, you don't have the right. I got a Fourth Amendment right. You don't have, you know, you have no right to illegally search me. You know, because you know, you're going by the Constitution, right? Now, some police would know to stop. They would say, "What, you think you a lawyer?" You got what I'm saying? So every situation has its own blueprint. Every situation. So that's the only reason why I say, okay, you just have to be really about, you know, walking into some of these situations where there's contractually. Yes, you have a natural right. Yes, you are your own. You should be. You and your family should be your own governing God and goddess. But at the same time, you're going to start, you know, if you're going to start dealing with the paperwork, then you got to know, like, the jurisdiction is going to lean on, again, whoever the contract favors. So if you're looking at your paperwork and your paperwork is, you know, as Doc was saying, it's 75% on their side and 25% on your side, you're in a losing situation. And the judge and everybody else who sees that paperwork as the final say is going to actually take what rightfully goes to that contract, and they're going to abide by that contract or whatever.
Right.
So
let's look at that though. Do the sovereign powers of the government that people contract with, does it not argue that, you know, at the end of the day, as I said, the paternal rights is more to the mother than the father, because we know this child comes from this woman. We don't know that it came from you, but the contractual status of putting your name on the birth certificate ties you into paternal rights. And
Well,
so
let's look at it like this, because this is where the sisters and the
I'm trying
brothers.
to talk before the birth certificate. I mean, not before the birth certificate, before DNA, and then you could bring it up to DNA in modern times. I'm just trying to deal with the whole scenario.
Yeah, no, I got you. And what I wanted to say was understanding that we're living inside of a matriarchal system. Like, even when you go into marriage, but then there's a hidden marriage going on. You know, you got a such thing as a matriarch and a patriarch, but then you don't put the form of marriage into the context or pretext of marriage. The word doesn't even show up in the English language. But then you can take the pros and the cons and find it. So what's happening inside of the courtroom is that the actual matrimonial ceremony going on has the man in default to the mother based on the ways that she informed the government on the birth certificate and how he signed on. That's where the paternity. So you got maternity, you got paternity, you got marriage, you got parage. We're in a matriarchal system because all of the contractual agreements that bond a man and a woman is done in holy matrimony. See? So it already starts off in the effeminate, because anciently the man would take the actual right over the child based on the paternity. He has my last name, see? And then you got to go deeper, because if
Well,
you
hold up. Let's just look at it, because this is what I was talking about earlier, that if you look at just the biblical narrative and setting, that man has dominion over the earth. You know, what's that? Genesis 1:27 or whatever, where he said, you know, he created them, and then maybe 28, he gave them dominion over the earth. Man is supposed to have it. It speaks about the creation. When you look at the creation in 2:7, Genesis 2:7, then 21, it shows you how they was created, but it shows that the man came first, then the woman. So by just default, the man came first, he had dominion first. Then the woman came, though she had co-rulership and co-dominion with the man. When she came into the picture, he was already over, he already had dominion. Right? So now when the two become one, their diminutive powers is there together. But just to deal with the narrative for anybody that didn't watch the show this morning, you can go back and watch that one. When the woman took information from the serpent and ate from the tree or whatever and gave to the man, now the protocol was broken. He's not first and then give to her. She became first and gave to him. So this is the whole fight. Like when people look at the Bible and say it's male chauvinistic and this and that, this is the whole fight that we see is what you're talking about, and even with the marriage and stuff. So I just wanted to put that out there for the people that don't understand. Once again, when you say the Bible the best tool, it has a order to it. It has an order to it that keeps things in a certain order to function right. So if you could go back in now. Hey.
Yeah, I mean that was a good way to make a great analogy. That was what I was trying to say. It's the matriarch versus the patriarch, and as he used that figurative and literal example of what's stated in the scriptures of the Bible, in the courtroom, the mother takes dominion over the child. But then, see, this is why I want to go back to the birth certificate. The thing is about obligations and contracts. What puts the mother in the position to be able to bring you into the court? The contractual agreement. The birth certificate is the obligation that makes you have to answer to this claim in some way, shape, or form. Now, I like to take it more into the private, and that's a little bit different than most people understand, because they don't understand the difference between, or the general public has not been properly informed about what's public and what's private, and the different ways to operate in the court systems. When you're in a court of law, you're in a public forum. Anybody can go look and pull up your case docket. Granted that they're following the statutes, because there's what happens when people break the law. Sometimes things get covered up, but at the same time, understanding that a courtroom is a public forum, anyone can come in and watch. But then if you, i.e., send a letter in the mail, that can be considered to be private. So understanding how to operate in the public and the private also has value to the matriarchal and patriarchal system. But understanding that the first obligation of the parents is to the birth certificate, because both of them signed it and had birth certificates signed on them. This is why you're able to be enforced to come into the court system, because you already agreed before the court date was set to the state laws, ordinance, codes, statutes, regulations, and customs. That's the way to express it in all of the legal jargon, so that you hit every point and angle that the mass public would look at it. Some people follow laws, others ordinance, others codes, others regulations, others statutes, and other people do things through custom. So when you cover them all and understand the public and the private and the obligation of that first contractual agreement, that's how you can find the case law that you need to remedy your situation.
I mean, it's like I said, both of these brothers said they didn't beat child support. So can you see that word I just put in the back? This, I have problems pronouncing stuff.
Despotical. I don't, yeah, I see it.
You ever ran across that?
No, but I can pull it up.
We're gonna bring some.
Tyrannical ruler.
Okay, I got it.
Brute force.
Despotic. That's what I got.
Yeah, I see it. It's just I see from what I see, it's brute force, tyrannical ruler. Anything other than rule of law to keep order.
Tyrant or autocrat.
Yeah, it says typical of a tyrannical or a despot. When you put it in the despotic, so there's a despot, which would be more like the root term, but it involves being tyrannical, is how I see it in my definition.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So we have those type of people, but I'm over here studying while we talking. So
But yeah, it's not like, and let me say this is not against women, because women have rights too, equal to the father. It's just, see, they divided to conquer our people, and they have us pitted against each other. So in the system of social engineering, the women have been charged to pretty much assassinate the character of the man within the court system, especially when he's not living up to his obligations commercially. Because it's not always about money. There's different ways to be a good father. Of course, we all have to do some currency exchange. But if women educate themselves on this too and actually work together, there's benefits to it, instead of bringing the matter before the public. See, that's the problem. You're never supposed to bring your feudal disputes with your family into the public.
That's another problem too, because you make your arrangement with each other in the public. When you have a public ceremony and paperwork going down.
Exactly.
Once again, you are contracting yourselves, and even if you want to split, it's contract. So I mean, when Polite speak on that, I hear him, and that's why at the same time I'm saying he's having a discourse taking place that people are not even chiming in on, and it's like he's trying to make himself seem smarter and more intelligent to people because he's a little bit more studied on the situation than the average. So it's like me myself, like I said, I'm preparing for that conversation. I want that conversation. I know y'all prepared to have that conversation, probably a little bit more prepared than me, because it's not something that I focus on as much or have to deal with in real time. If I have to deal with it in real time, then I'm gonna get into it and get more in depth and become more acclimated to the terms and stuff. Like, hey, I need to know these things so I can go beat somebody up, make sure I win my whatever. So, when he talking about having contracts and doing this, and as we was getting to escrow and all of these things and stuff, it's like, okay, that sound good, but you need to understand, once again, you're putting yourself in a contract. No matter what contract it is, you need to understand that you have a contractual agreement once you come into contract with somebody. And if the contract is more in their favor than your favor, you lose. That's just it. That's really what we talking about and trying to get over, hopefully, to y'all right now, that you need to start understanding these things, because these are the things that's going to bind you or loosen you from certain obligations and certain things that's coming down the pipe. Don't run from it. Just know that when you do it, like I was at work and had issues, right? So they said everybody that worked on this line did this and everything. I said, no, that's not me. If you're going to say everybody on the line was doing it and everybody agreed to it, I'm not going to agree to it. You need to say Carl said it wasn't. You got to change that language in that document that you writing up, because you're trying to write me up and put something in my file.
Well, that's what
So
when the term status correction slides right into like what you just explained. Because when people say it and it's so vague and it's what is it? It's pretty much that. It's correcting your political status that was based on the obligation inside the birth certificate agreement, and the different ways at which people talk about how you can do that, putting a lien through Uniform Commercial Code on your estate or that governing body of politic, i.e. the birth certificate, or setting up trust irrevocable and placing all of your estate property into a trust. See, it takes a lot of education in business, because the one thing I see that the black people do wrong is when you look at it, we do too much wanting to own things and not understanding what the right is to own things, and then not understanding how to actually move our liabilities when we want a car, we want a house, and not purchasing certain things in your name, but doing it through a business in order to benefit a structure or governing body of politic commercially, which gives you different rights when you're dealing with specific property. So if you look at it from white supremacy and racism, white people are understanding these principles and they're moving commercially and purchasing things or not purchasing things, because let me be more case specific. When you understand legal jargon, you can only make a purchase if you got gold and silver. When we're dealing with legal tender, the right to have property is governed by the ways at which you actually obtain that property. So most of our people as a whole own businesses. They don't purchase anything for their businesses, so they lose by default because they want to have direct ownership rights. I want to own the house. I want to own the car. And then now this gets into tax brackets and what you have to pay in taxation.
Yeah. Hold up. We divulging too much right now. Y'all, you know, we just trying to wake you up to this stuff. We ain't trying to give you the whole king caboodle here.
Yeah, nah, but this is stuff that was spoke about when them brothers dropped it. It's not really anything new when it comes down to understanding how to purchase things. I mean, or how to obtain things is a better term. So it's just understanding that, and now people lack that knowledge. So that's the reason why the principalities are able to manipulate that and not have people know these things, you know. But if you can get something from it at the end of the day, you definitely need to focus on studying the actual branches of government and knowing how the government flows.
This is just the understanding that, once again, like if they would have looked at contract and contractual sovereignty and agreements and this and that, then they'll understand why Pharaoh and, you know, Sarah soon said he was fighting for contract, and no, I don't want to be on a contract, but if I'm going to be on a contract, this contract that I want, you know what I'm saying? And that becomes an argument over the language of the contract. You breaking up there, Dollar. So now it becomes a fight over the language on the contract, because once again, now you got to put everything back in its proper perspective. Like, this is who and what I want to be and how I want to be seen within this contract. This portion has to define my position and everything properly, because one thing Pharaoh was saying is it's like they was trying to own him through the discourse or through the language. They was trying to own him in any future stuff that he did. Right? So you breaking up. Anybody that's bringing you a contract, that's why now you got to go get lawyers. You got to deal with the legal stuff of it, because somebody is trying to bring you into bondage if the contract is in your favor.
Yeah, I mean, of course, that's just correcting your political status within an agreement. So what happens is somewhere in the negotiations it went wrong. So a specific party felt like it wasn't a benefit for them to enter that agreement, and that's where the law of contracts comes in. Contracts are dynamic. It's as unique as a fingerprint, because everybody has different needs in an obligation or in an agreement. And before you enter one, you have to know the rules of that agreement and what you're obligated to perform, as they would say. What are you obligated to perform in an agreement? And then the enforcement on the penalties when you break the agreement. All of these things are relative to what's going on inside of the state, because when you're moving and driving around, you're agreeing or disagreeing at every stop and interval that you agree to take or don't. and there's penalties associated with that based on contractual agreements. Again, it's endless. You could just go on and on and on about how intricate by design the mind of people are, and how that plays into the narrative too. Man laws up against natural laws, up against divine laws. There's different forms of law, and then you have to study into that and understand those principles. The Comedics say ma'at.
So when the people that deal with the Bible get into legal issues and they call them legalists and stuff, understand that, number one, we entered into a covenant in the contract. Y'all trying to say y'all don't have to be under the covenant of the contract, right? Oh, man. But anyway, Royal, you back yet?
Yeah, I see he was trying to get in. That was what the feedback was.
Yeah, he was having a problem with his internet service.
But yeah, man, like, at the end of the day, talking on the child support thing, like, all you got to do is understand the obligations in the agreement and how to assert it. And I think Royale touched on that on other shows. It's about how you present your paperwork. And again, I said I'd like to try to settle things in the private. So you really want to settle your matters before they even become issues. And there's ways to do that too. Before you're ever summoned to a court, you can do certain things so that in the event that you are, there's certain insurance there for you. So learning more about how to actually settle things in the private as opposed to letting it get dragged in the court.
That can be contractual between me and you. So when we go forth, we can say we had an agreement and stuff. Now that you broke the contract, we just looking for this party to make the people obligated or responsible for their obligations in the contract. That's it.
Yes, and then you got to look at it too from a domestic. Now, let me give you a scenario. A lot of the times, it's like a domestic violence dispute where you have some women who claim to love individuals and they beat on them, and then they call the cops, and then the woman wants to drop the charges, but the state picks up the charge and keeps running with it. That's based on obligations too. So a lot of the times, it doesn't always be the women.
That's because you entered in the contract and got a marriage license and stuff with it.
Absolutely. So a lot of the times it might not be the woman. You could be brought into child support if your child's mother actually collects some form of social benefits from the state or welfare benefits, and then the state will pick it up and then bring you in the court. So you got to look at all of the angles and dynamics of that first contract and how to apply the law, and that's why I said case law is the key. And this case law it takes a lot of time and study because there's so many cases, there's millions of disputes that happen in history that were documented that you have to remedy. But I'll say this, I was taught this way: there's always a remedy at law. It's just about how far and how deep you want to dig and knowing the right places to look. So I'm just leaving breadcrumbs. Case law is important. Knowing how to file documentation is important. Trying to settle things in the private is important. And that's vast, and it deals with a lot of different knowledges of contracts, but this is just general. So you want to be able to apply that. And I wish Royale could come back in because he has a different perspective too on it. And it's good when you could spin those perspectives around because there's not one way to do this thing. It's a million ways to skin a cat.
He'll make it back in. If he don't, then that's just another show or whatever. But like I said, my whole thing of having the show is to just try to deal with people to understand that at the end of the day, it's a conversation and a discourse out there that they not entering into because they think it's too hard. Look, if I could deal with it, I could deal with it. If I could deal with it, and I could deal with it, I just I ain't all the way in it. For some reason, I'm getting feedback from you with my mic is feeding through your mic. So, well, you made that. Yeah, I hear him filling in fat.
Yo, I got the Flintstone internet right now. I don't know what's going on.
So, Dolla, you can hit him what you were saying and said you wish he came back so he can.
Yeah, nah, because I was just talking about the different formations in the case law and how to submit the paperwork and how ways at which to settle things in the private. Because I think that was big. I know you did a lot of rounds, so I know you had to do a lot of study and submissions and things like that helped to push your case along and get them to drop it.
When it came to how to drop it.
No, I'm saying you pushed a lot of paperwork and submissions of evidence in order to have them drop it. Yeah. And studied a lot of case law.
Yeah, yeah. Just it's just in case, just in case, just in case. That's the scenario where from studying their case law, from submitting the paperwork, and it's just something where working out every scenario, like what if this one doesn't work? What if a jurisdiction doesn't work? What if DNA doesn't work? What if so every circumstance, every way that I can think that what if these guys pretend as if like they're ignorant to law. So it's just when it comes to presenting case law, you have to always think like what if case law that that counters whatever you present. And that's really the mentality that you got to go into, like do it thinking that, don't go into any situation thinking that, okay, once I do this, everything is all good, and and whether it's whatever contract you feel like they'll honor this contract. No, they won't. Just think that what if they don't. So it's just having more, because what they do is they bombard you with motions and other uh, cases and other situations where you have to figure out a way. um, you got to kind of think like 4 or 5 steps ahead. All right. So just because you have that 1 or 2 case laws, like I had about 3 case laws, but I just kept my own point away saying, throw this case out, throw this case out. And then I would say, then I would get into why they should throw it out. Uh,
You're breaking up again, Royal.
about back is they'll just keep what they're what you're presenting.
You're breaking up, man. Your Flintstone cable line. Are you by your router? Can you plug in sometime the Wi-Fi?
I was supposed to go live later on today. Hopefully it's not this. Okay.
Yeah, what happened is sometimes you have to plug in. The Wi-Fi is a different thing sometime, and it just want to read or do whatever. So you got to plug into your router sometime.
Well, let me say something about what he said on jurisdiction, because that word and people are like, what's jurisdiction? That's the court's right to hear your case. So when he's talking jurisdiction, and I mean, that's how I pretty much execute it.
You hear me or no?
I hear you. I heard you. But yeah, jurisdiction involves the right for the court to hear your case. So you're aware. And again, Black's Law Dictionary will help. You can even look up the general term and get an idea of jurisdiction. It's the ability to enforce a thing based on the location of where the event took place. So if something happens in New York State, you may be brought into a New York State court. If you live in another state, it may happen in a federal court because you are from another state. So that's jurisdiction, understanding the contractual roadblocks or borders, checks and borders that are written. Who says that the county line road can be here? That's contracts again. So talking jurisdiction, there's ways to argue the court's right to hear the case. And then there's ways to find case law and submit that in proper formation. It depends. It depends, like he said, every case is different. But there's certain general terms that are uniform in the all the cases. And again, it deals with obligations to the contractual agreements you entered into within the state you live in. So studying the statutes at large, as they say, for your state, understanding how the laws are written through legislation, knowing those parties and how to, contact them when you see certain things that are not right within the statutes. You can be proactive. You don't have to, again, get pulled into a court of law in order to become an administrator. You should reach out to certain local politicians and talk about issues. Believe it or not, when you do that, some of them will respond and maybe try to use their power to lobby and legislate certain things that can change. But if you don't apply the administrative aspects of this thing, you're gonna lose. Paper works, as they say. So even people making paper money, they're paper pushers, data entry and things of that nature. So again, be proactive. You don't have to get pulled into court to have to want to know about status correction. Write politicians and look at your state's laws and legislation and become proactive in dealing with it, and you can make those changes.
Like you said, studying all them case things and stuff, because you know they deal with the what's the one that they like to say Lemoore's like to deal with all the time,
Dred Scott.
Dred Scott and all of that and stuff. You know, it's more of them on the books than just Dred Scott, and it's in different states. It's just that that one went up in the court system in a way that others didn't, and it became prominent. You know what I'm saying? It became the most focal point, but it's others out there. So it is what it is. That's why we as a people, you know, we're not dealing with government and law and politics and stuff like that. We lose all the time. But that's where black nationalism comes in at, because you got to look at those things and deal with those things in a national perspective, a nationalist perspective, I should say, or from a black perspective. How do this thing that's on the books affect me and my people? Then you get it struck off the books or whatever. This is what the LGBT community come in at, that they say, well, how do this affect us civilly? Civil in the civil system, how do this affect us? And we're gonna either get that struck out or we're gonna get something else put on the books. So, and it's all due to contract.
Yeah, and jurisdiction. So know, this is a key too. Know what court you're in. You got to know what law applies in what court. That's why I say the rules is pivotal. If you want to argue constitution, you got to bring the court into a constitutional fold, a government court. If you're dealing with a magistrate, you're not necessarily dealing with a judge. So you have to understand what the rules that govern that specific venue based on jurisdiction you're in, and how to formulate your argument. Because if you're in the wrong court and you're arguing the wrong defense, you're in incompetency by default. So you got to know the rules of the court to engage and understand the constitutional fold of government, to know what kind of or style of court that you're in when you're in probate court, which is like surrogate family court, or if you're in what is termed a criminal court, or a civil matter is being held in a civil court. And then you got court of claims, you have courts in equity, there's different courts. So make sure you're clear on what you're arguing when you're arguing in specific venues.
Right. So once again, people, this is the where you back.
Yeah.
This is to bring you into understanding
If
that.
you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you. This is to give you understanding once again, because as I go other places with this is to let you know that you know what I'm saying, Polite, Ali Muhammad, the Moors and stuff, they trying to bring you back to constitutional agreements and stuff. They trying to bring you back under the corporation and this and that. Right? You have to understand that these people are taking you back into the contract, taking you back into stuff. So at the same time, you have to understand when you're dealing with these brothers and you talking this contract stuff and everything with them, exactly what are they bringing you and how they bringing it to you and what contracts are they trying to put you under. Because when you sending money or signing paperwork and different stuff, you never know what you contracting yourself in with these people. That's all I'm doing, is trying to blow the trumpet like, hey, watch these people. When Polite got you trying to go up against LAPD with him, and then he trying to get lawyers and doing all that, what is he trying to do? What type of block politically is he trying to create in different stuff? That's what I'm talking about. And the only reason I'm talking about this stuff, because he's working on a higher level than your average person that don't care nothing about this or even try to look into this. So watch that sovereign paperwork conversation and all of that stuff, and search these people out before you do what you do. But go ahead, Rawyal.
Yeah, I think people would at this point people would know a little better by now. I think personally, from just from the reactions of the public and the thousands and hundreds of people, what they who kind of who kind of voicing their opinion as far as as far as being presented with anything at this point from anybody on any level. Everybody to the people right now, everybody's a fraud, everybody's a scam. That's just the that's just the punchline right now. But yeah, but definitely, like you said, just search, just do some research. It will behoove you to do some research on anybody that you're going to sign paperwork with. If it's not, if it's something that's talking about sovereignty, I would quadruple check before jumping into anything like that with anyone. You got what I'm saying? So, my presentation is always going to be for the practical man or woman to use the information to their advantage. And from that standpoint, you can win. I won, and there's other people that won just from a practical standpoint, not coming from not saying I was a Moor or a Jew or or a New Covenant or whatever the case is. Like, people gonna, people, you take what works best for you, but you got to be smart about whatever you're going to step into, because again, like Adi was saying, when you were saying as far as if they have too much, if they have like 75% and they have jurisdiction over the contract, and you walk into one of these courts and you don't understand on how to present your case or present a situation, then you get jammed up. And that's where I'm getting a lot of phone calls where people are saying like, hey, I was under this person. Hey, this person, I paid this person to do this or whatever. And, could you do it for me now? And again, they brother me, but then they PayPal these other guys. And that's my punchline now. It's like, man, you can hear from the conversation, you can see from the energy. It just takes a lot of research. It takes a lot of digging, takes a lot of man hours to do some of this research. And just to hand it over, is one thing. But at the same time, it's like, these guys are like, they're getting pretty rich, or getting pretty, they're monetizing their conversations with you. And then they turn around, and then when you feel burnt, it's you coming to us or whatever. So it will behoove you to do a lot of research on what's going on. I'm gonna go ahead and just step away and try to figure out what the hell's going on with my internet, because I do want to go live a little later on, because I haven't went live on my own channel in a while. But I wanted to shed some light on the topic and show some love at the same time to to my brother Israel and Dolla Skillz. So definitely salute to anybody in the chat, and everybody in the chat. And salute to the people. And whatever, whenever a conversation like this come up, when it comes to like sovereignty or things like that, just the first thing that should ring off in your head is, okay, sovereign from who? And jurisdiction, sovereignty, jurisdiction. That means you have to, you got to start digging on from whether it's the city, the state, and anything like that. So you can you gotta know about you being your own God, and you studying your own, spiritual belief system. Because really that's what it's going to boil down to. Because they're going to, when they present in their paperwork, it's under their spiritual belief system. And that's in turn, if you don't understand that part of it, if you don't understand that aspect of being summoned is actually a spiritual thing, and and you wind up walking into it just thinking with the straight and narrow like these, it's just this is what it says on the paper. There's always a spiritual element to the paperwork that you're presenting, because it's not physically you. So again, that's why if you get into a contract with somebody who's charging you X amount of cash, and you give your cash to that person, but then they saying, okay, well, you don't have the rest of the paperwork, and then you get into a situation. Most people that get into these paperwork situations wind up trying to use it for child support, trying to use it for the police, to beat different probations and things like that. And then it doesn't really work for them. It's no real remedy for them, because something is incomplete, and the actual person who they signed their paperwork over to is always like missing in action when they need them. So with all that being said, again, thanks for having me. And again, let me get to figuring out figuring out, you know, because I done plugged it in, and I think I'm back functioning. But I'll try to go live in a hour or so and talk about
a whole lot better now. I mean, if you want to go, that's cool. If not, let me play this audio for the people that's been sitting around. I'm gonna show y'all what sparked this whole thing and why I started getting into this, because Polite like to say women's are God, this, that, and the other. He don't see male deities or whatever. Not that he don't see them, but he don't speak about them like he do the female. Just go with the matriarch, patriarch, so on and so forth, and all the male and female back and forth that we've been hearing for a while now, when people, you know, ratcheting up even more.
About being masters of our own destiny. And people say, well, black man can never be sovereign in white America and all this other stuff. Well, first of all, I don't accredit America to ownership of white people, number one. And number two, when I say I'm sovereign, that's something that's inherited in my birthright. I confide in the sovereign and corporal creator. And we have joint heir to his throne, or to the throne in general. So how could my creator be sovereign, reign supreme, have his own kingdom, and I not be sovereign simultaneously? I'm a child of the Most High. So you're going to tell me, if somebody put some stipulation down in paperwork, that it contrasts immensely to who and what I am, to the extent that I have to nullify who and what I am by blood, who and what I am by spirit? I'm supposed to throw that all away and say, you know what, even though sovereign means or alludes to one being royal, I'm supposed to throw all of this away now because someone said that I'm not royal. Someone's saying that I don't come from a royal family or a royal bloodline. Someone is saying that my creator is not king in fullest capacity and reigns supreme beyond the physical dimension. So you see, when people like our people try to incur that level of stress and ignorance on me, I don't argue no more. I just say, hey, if you're not from a royal family or bloodline, then you not. But nothing changes in me because of the construct of society. I'm still going to remain to be who and what I am. I am that I am.
So, I am that I am. He used that convo. That's Israel's. But anyway, as he said, he got a sovereign creator. He said a king. He didn't deal with no female, feminine. He dealt with masculine. If you want to get in on.
Well, I mean, I'm gonna just say this quick because I said it earlier, and notice he said sovereign, but he didn't say indigenous. And to me, in my understanding, I overstand that situation, meaning that the two are like oil and water. Really, one supersedes the other. So my rights to land is going to supersede my sovereignty, because my indigenous right, based on my blood content, even the soil has minerals in it. So if I'm governed by that principality in regards to the natural right to land, then the escheatment documents are really the secondary aspect of it. That sovereignty ain't nothing but you being the king on a piece of paper, is what I'm trying to say in layman's terms. Whereas indigenous rights is you standing upon the land and being bound to it because the things that the land uses in order to bring forth life flow through you. You're one and the same. So then that's where the natural law comes in, or your natural creator given right is, as he said, to have these things which transcends the physical matter of the universe that we're dealing with here. So that's where the ecclesiastical principalities come into. But again, let's not get it misconstrued. When we're talking sovereignty, we're talking about all of those things written down on a piece of paper, or in the least scribed on stone. So yeah, that's the sovereign right, the paper right, the contractual commercial right, or the shipper's manifest rights. But he left out the indigenous right. And I will say this with like Ali Muhammad and them, they do deal with certain aspects of doing blood tests and finding out who you really are. So that's dealing more with the indigenous right side of things.
Well, I guess what I could add to it is just saying that at the end of the day, it still sounds like a belief to me. It's like, you're gonna believe what you're gonna believe, he gonna believe what he gonna believe, right? And at the end of the day, it depends on who you're in front of, and what in the situation that you're dealing with, that's going to abide to your belief system. Now, your knowledge of land, your knowledge of the paperwork, that's one thing, but it's just really on the situation, and it will behoove people to start working together. And that's really the key, because if it's just you and maybe one or two or maybe a handful of people, you know, you can have about 100 people working with you. But if it's only your 100 against the 7 billion, then you know it's not, it's, you know, it's just not really worth the fight. You got what I'm saying? So
that's what a whole thing, having a organization or a body or this and that anyway. You
yeah,
know,
well, that's why you were saying a little earlier as far as with the, you know, with the Moors. But I don't say that it has to be just the Moors. You got what I mean? As far as dealing with your
I'm just
local.
saying they didn't contracted amongst themselves in the American government and stuff. And when they talk, their whole thing is to bring people into that national fold. So whatever national fold or whatever it is you want to deal with, you just got to say you want to be a part of that and contract with that and deal with organizations and whatever capacity. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, Israelites is talking about that now and saying sovereign nationalists and this, that, and everything. So it's strength in numbers, right? So just like Malcolm X, Khalil Muhammad, and all these people talking black nationalism, they said, that's what Khalil said. Hey, fuck with religion or what you believe. Shit, come over here and build this national fold. And once we get these numbers and stuff and get this contract amongst ourselves, then we would defend ourselves, this, that, and the other, and we could go to other foreign blacks outside of this United States of America, this corporation, incorporate and contract with them. And once we come into this contract or this commonwealth or this nation and we join like that, then we got power. Outside of that, the powers that be and the contracts and the nations that run thing already, it will forever run stuff.
Yeah, but you know, so one of the things is when you're dealing with these city, state, and federal officials, and you know, you coming from an indigenous standpoint, or you coming from you know, a paperwork sovereign standpoint, then you still have to look at, you know, your surroundings. And one of the things that we get from the military, or I get from the military, is adapt and overcome. You know, that is that simple. You know, you got to use whatever you can to your advantage, you know. And that's the end all be all. When you're in a situation where you can use the land to your advantage because this is your land, you know. But when you have Larry Silverstein and Donald Trump and all these other real estate giants eating up your land, and you got the port authorities eating up your land, then how you haven't defended yourself from that. So then all of a sudden they have jurisdiction over your land. So then you have to go back to the paperwork. So then you own the paperwork and you're in their court system and you're saying, well, I'm sovereign, right? And then they say, okay, well, prove your God. So then you got to dig into a spiritual system that predates their spiritual system. So it's just something where you got to know to use whatever you can to your advantage, because trust and believe they will, and that's what they have been doing. Right now you have a president, you know, that's representing the corporation, that's coming out and saying like it's going to be on the people at this point. So if it's on the people to make right and to get things squared away, then, you know, whatever little differences we all have, we have to sort them out immediately. Because
yeah, that's why I'm saying the simplicity of the show and the conversation and shit. What the fuck? We got to come in contract with each other, in agreement with each other, and we have to prevent like the Katrina shit from happening and stuff. That if something happened to us, the real SOS, save ourselves shit. How are we gonna help our brothers sisters out in Flint when they fucking water fucked up and everything? So we gotta build. As the conversation been on the table, STEM and shit, where we got people that can do stuff, and we send bodies of representatives to help out in situations and shit. Different corporations. There's 50 fucking corporations here that we got to deal with. So they're incorporated and they got contracts and they doing shit with each other. We have to do the same thing. So when people talking unity, fuck unity if it ain't sitting down with a fucking pen and paper and saying what your organization is and what it ain't and what you can and can't do, and we not contracting you within the fold of things to do shit that need to be done. It's like, damn, you a plumber? Well, come fix some motherfucking plumbing, and we're gonna give you some money. And you take your skill, make some money, take your ass back home. You know, so what do? You make music, you make beats, nigga, you rhyme, let's make motherfucking CD, put it out there, make some money. You do YouTubes and shit, let's get on your channel and blow that motherfucker up and make some money and do this and do that. So the thing is, whatever, shit.
You talking group economics right there.
Right.
Yeah, like, and how to,
it's churchonomics and all of that shit. So it's a lot of shit to deal with. But like I said, I'm not even trying to get into the I just say complication of the deep part of it, because it's like, at the end of the day, what the fuck are you trying to convey? That's how I think, right? So y'all all know that.
For me, I say what I was doing with the show, you know, was just giving some information to the people. And like Israel said, I agree with Royale. Like, some of the stuff, you can't put it all in one show anyway, number one. Number two, the information is not necessarily for everybody, but at the same time, the audience that I'm speaking to, we just wanted them to know, we know, you know what I'm saying? We understand, or as they say, overstand the situation. We looking at it from the top down. So, you know, we aware of the UCC and all of that things, and status correction at different levels of administration. It works for some people. Be careful what you put yourself into. Make sure you do the research and study, because that's important. And then have hands-on, because if you just sit and talking about it, then you're not going to learn. I learn from hands-on. So I've administrated different things to learn these things. And then you got to remove the fear too, because fear plays a big factor in you not learning things. When you're afraid to kick the tree every day, then you don't have the strong enough shin to break a leg when it's time to kick somebody's chin out. So you got to kick the tree and take the pain a little bit and learn, but at the same time, just be careful while you're doing what you're doing, and do it for the right reasons, and you can't lose in the exchange.
Yeah. So this is a show to blow the trumpet and awareness and shit. That when you hear Polite talk, Polite dealing with the shit that's on paper that he can't run from. See, that's the thing about that brother. I'm about to say that nigga, but that brother, right? In any of us, when you have certain shit on paper and stuff, that like people can argue the Bible all day. If you ain't saying what's written in there and you saying some other shit, I'm gonna take you to what's written and say you ain't do it. You not. I'm a legalist. I'm gonna go to the paperwork. I'm gonna go to the book. I will go to the. It's the same thing when you just go to law. It's natural to us that deals with a codified law that's in the book. So then you go to the government law, and it's the same thing, because that is with the same stuff, same principles. So I encourage more people to just look, man, read the contract, watch who you contract with, and watch what's in the contract. And
yeah, I agree with that.
Slick niggas like Polite. He said he don't believe in God and stuff. He said he don't believe in God and stuff, but you heard all that. I'm the son of the Most High and all that shit. Why is he using that lingo? Because he can't escape it. It's bound him to it. He can't escape it. So that shit he telling you about my wife and my mother is God and this and that and this and that and fuck religion, and if that nigga wants some sovereignty rights and he wants some paperwork rights, he got to speak their lingo. So,
well, that's the Holy See Corporation. You're not getting from under that. At the end of the day, if you move in commercially and understand the tiered corporate system of body politics, world governing body, then you're dealing with, you know, if he's calling his God, he could have been speaking literally to the term of the corporal body, because it is his God. If you're dealing with sovereignty paperwork, you're dealing with ecclesiastical principalities, because the laws underlying the surface that govern these things are Roman civilly, is canon law.
Yeah, so all that Papa, and like I said, at the end of the day, even if it was Malachi Z. York and just the New Wabi and stuff that he was dealing with, and how he had a seat and a throne and a crown that he has to adhere to, with the whole Prince York saying, you know, his father is a political this and that. You know what I'm saying? Well, even if it's that, I'm just, one of the simplistic things is he dealing with a masculine, not a feminine. So that bullshit that women is God and this and that, you know, he not putting it all in the proper perspective. He leave it out there hanging like that, and then say, well, I'm just bigging up the woman. I don't never say the man ain't God, but damn, can I big up the woman for a set? Nah, nigga, big them up, both up at the same time. Build them up together. Or if you want to do it in order, you build a man up, then you build a woman up. Or if that's not the case, you sit your ass down and put your wife in front of the camera and build her up first. I mean, wouldn't that be the simplicity of it? Why the fuck are you talking? Put the woman in front of the camera. She's the main focus. That's the order. The woman first, then the man. You gonna get up and talk, then she come after you. I mean, it's just simple stuff like that. I just trying to address in this whole thing. So hopefully y'all got something out of it. It was a lot dropped, right? Hopefully you don't get confused. Hopefully you don't get stupid and go try to be sovereign and get you some paperwork. And take your time, pump your brakes, figure out the small stuff.
Crawl before you walk, as they say. You gotta crawl before you walk.
They tried to help us out with contracts with phones. Remember I told you I was in a contractual agreement with a phone company. We're still looking for my ass today. After down there 10 years or whatever, maybe 20 years now. But I could go buy a $15 phone and get a card now, and I ain't in no contract. Whenever I want to talk, I just put the $30 on there, and I got unlimited minutes. So that saved us from, you know, contracting ourselves with some goddamn cell phone company. So learn how to diffuse yourself from certain contracts and certain shit you own right now. You know what I'm saying? You know, every time you go buy a car, you say, well, I'm going to pay you this so such and such a month. So stop trying to buy new cars and shit and buy some shit that you could pay $2,000 for and get on the road and get the rolling with and save your money elsewhere instead of getting contract and have to work hard so you can go pay that damn debt every month.
Appreciation. Deal with things that appreciate in value, as opposed to depreciation or becomes a debt liability. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Hey y'all, we out. 85,000. Appreciate everybody that listened, you know, participated and everything else.
All right, peace to the family. All right, thanks for having me again.
All right.
All right, peace.
All right.
Peace.
Peace.